Welcome to JB Media's free community webinars. My name is Sarah Benoit, and I'm very excited to have everyone here today. Today, we're going to be covering the third topic in a series of three webinars that we've done in the last 10 days. And today, we're going to talk about tips for setting up and managing successful online meetings. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First, you can use the question and answer feature or the chat to type in any questions that you have during this time. I will be alerted anytime that you're adding to the chat or the Q&A, and I'm glad to stop as we go along and provide any additional feedback. Also, you will get a copy of this recording along with the ability to download the slide deck. So basically, by sometime later today or first thing in the morning, I will have rendered and uploaded the recordings and put everything together on the page where you signed up. That page is where we're also archiving all of our community webinars. And we will be offering some in April as well, so keep that link. It's just jbmediagroup.llc.com/community. And we're going to keep that link going for a while, especially while we are all working from home and doing other things, so that we can keep providing some great content for people as they make an adjustment to their work life and their professional setting. The other two webinars that we recently did, the first one was essentially on how to set up your workstations at home and really be more productive and creative. And the second one was about creating online classes and courses. So again, if you go to that link where you signed up for this webinar, you'll see we're archiving all of our recordings and slide decks there. So if you didn't get a chance to make the first two, please feel free to watch them and feel free to share those recordings with anyone that you know who could use some support during this time. So again, feel free as we go along to add in any questions that you have or any even thoughts or things that you'd like to just recommend to the rest of the attendees today. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Benoit, and I'm the co-founder and lead instructor of the JB Media Institute. So for the last 17 years, I have been working both solo and with a number of different teams online, and that's why I wanted to share some of my best practices today for online meetings. So there's a few do's and don'ts that I want to share, and I think this list could probably be longer, and I'm sure everybody has their own opinions depending on their preferences, but there's a few things that I think can be really useful to almost anyone in any industry with teams of any size. So I want to go through those first few recommendations. The first one is test everything. So especially for any of you that are newer to doing everything virtually with your business, and maybe you've moved your whole team or your whole office back to your house, it's really important in the beginning just to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the tools and that they are prepared to attend the meetings and can really listen and participate. So to me, the first thing you can do is find a partner, whether it's a friend or a colleague or a coworker, before you have your online meetings, especially if you're just now starting to do them, to just test everything out. And even if you've already started doing your meetings in the last month, you may want to play around and test some of the features of the system that you have. So there's always more features that you can explore inside of a variety of online meeting tools. The other thing is, if you have any team members, or let's say you're even meeting with your clients and they are really not accustomed to meeting, even though you may have said that the time frames of your meeting are going to be from 10 to noon, if you can, get on 5 or 10 minutes early and allow people who are doing it for the first time to join you early as well. And that allows them to troubleshoot, ask questions, deal with any technical issues they may be having before you actually start the meeting agenda. So for example, this morning I did an awesome webinar with the Chamber. I was part of a panel talking about best practices for working from home, and all of us that were on the panel joined 10 minutes early just to make sure we were all set up, everything was working properly, and so by the time the attendees joined right at 10 a.m., the whole webinar flowed very smoothly. So keep that in mind, and then be aware of any team limitations that may be present. So In rural areas like Western North Carolina, we have to be thoughtful that people who live outside of the city proper may have varying levels of access to high-speed broadband internet. So because I have a number of students and clients that live, in Swain County, or they live in Transylvania County, or they live in Haywood County, some of them even further out in towns like Murphy, where essentially being that far out in the mountains means that not everybody's home has the same level of Wi-Fi access or internet access. So just knowing where your clients, your team members, your colleagues, where they are based will help you just know if there's going to be somebody who may have limitations. So we'll talk about this a little bit more and how this plays out, but I think it's something that's really important for those of us who don't live in major metro areas and don't live in flatland to pay attention to. The second tip is understanding the power of mute. So this is something that comes up a lot when I'm teaching classes online. We will inevitably always have one student who forgets to mute themselves, or even though I set the meeting to have everyone muted when they first enter, they unmute it, and then all of a sudden I can hear their husband or wife in the background talking. I can hear their kids screaming. I can hear their dogs barking. I can hear somebody doing the dishes. And that can be really disruptive to the meeting at large. So just really communicating up front with people the expectation when you first log on to the meeting, you will be muted or unmuted. Please make sure when you first log on that you look for that icon so that you know how to make that adjustment. Especially because in some meetings, we really might want to have people be able to talk back and forth and engage. And if we're going to do that, it really is helpful if people can unmute and mute themselves one at a time, and we can avoid anything distracting. Also, on systems like Zoom, which we're using today, essentially I can control some of the meeting settings. So when I was teaching a class for Berkeley last week, like I said, we had one student who had unmuted herself and then started having a conversation with her roommate. And instead of me trying to talk to her and say, hey, pay attention for a second and mute yourself, which would have, I think, been disruptive all around, as the host of the meeting, I have the ability to just mute her from my actual panel. So that really helped me, again, in numerous situations, kind of manage things more quickly, just in case somebody forgets. But being upfront with people when you send them the meeting invite, the date, the time, maybe the information for how to log on, just including with that, their understanding that they need to be paying attention to that and, aware of where that is once they log in and how they can control that. Another thing is, again, in the spirit of letting people know the expectations, is to let them know that they really need to have a headset or earbuds. Right now, a lot of people are working from home, and that means that there's a lot of unpredictable things going on in the background of your work. And in general, even when you're in an office or in an environment like I'm in now, which is a private room that's pretty quiet, essentially, in a lot of meeting situations, you will end up with some sort of echo or feedback depending on who's in the meeting and where they're coming from and their internet access speeds. So headsets and earbuds are often, even if you end up not using them in every circumstance, having them available in case there is some sort of poor audio quality or feedback can be really valuable. Also, most headsets and earbud systems have that microphone that is, right along the edge of your headset. And so that microphone is going to allow people to speak more clearly. And when you're asking them for feedback or it's time for them to step into the limelight in that part of the agenda, that they're just really clear and understandable. A lot of times, if you don't have a headset and earbuds, I recommend getting tools like this. So this is the microphone that I use for most of my webinars, and it does dampen sound around it and different things like that. So what I like to avoid is sometimes using the microphone and the speakers on my laptop. So if I'm using my Mac laptop, I might have better quality. If I'm using my PC laptop, sometimes the quality is not as good. Also, when people are able to put in their earbuds or their headset or even wear it and really hear what's going on more intimately, I feel like it increases focus and attention and participation from the people attending your meeting. So again, they will be less distracted by the noise around them if they have their headset on. So that's always a good thing to think about. Fourth, you really need to create clear meeting agendas. So I feel like most of us know when you're in person and you're all connecting, it's very easy to, get off track and sometimes start talking about things that aren't related to what's most important about the meeting. Sometimes it's also easy to sort of just run away with yourselves and, you get into a topic and then you start brainstorming. Then all of a sudden a lot of time in your meeting has gone by, but you didn't quite accomplish everything that you needed to. So creating an agenda can be really valuable. Even mapping out the specific time that you want to spend on different things. So here at JB Media, when we do our meetings, we use a system called EOS. It's the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And when we have our team meetings, essentially, we have different parts of the agenda with different time frames. So it might be 5 minutes for this, 15 minutes for this, another 10 minutes for this. And we're actually paying really close attention and tracking as we go through the meeting if we're staying on track or getting distracted in any way. And I find that this is just really helpful in making sure that our meeting time is as productive as possible. Also, if you're going to have a longer meeting, a staff meeting that's maybe 2 hours, a client meeting where you're working on a project, could be even longer, make sure that you include breaks if it's necessary. So if you're going to meet for 3 hours, maybe every hour, give everybody 5 minutes to go get water, a cup of coffee, tea, go to the bathroom, whatever it is that they need to do. And then as part of your meeting agenda, make sure that you set some goals. So again, I think a lot of us are in a number of meetings to begin with when it comes to our jobs. I know in my world, I meet with a lot of clients, a lot of team members, a lot of community members with different volunteer work that I do. So it's really important to me that my meetings don't extraneously just go long without intention. Because if I'm not careful, I can end up with so many meetings in a day. And if they're all extending past the agenda, then I start to really not have time to work and to do things like answer my emails and my phone. So setting goals about why you're meeting and what the purpose is and being clear about that and transparent with everyone involved is also really valuable and important. And then you want to choose the right meeting software. So this is where there are endless options. And I'm going to make some recommendations about what I love and what I think is exciting. But of course, I think there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to which meeting software tool is the best one for what you're trying to accomplish. So there's a few things that you have to take into consideration. The first is exactly what features do you need? So especially if you're trying to create a more in-person meeting experience in the virtual world, you want to make sure that you're going to choose a platform that can facilitate the various features that you need. So it may be that you want people to be able to complete polls or do Q&As. Maybe you want to be able to record everything and store it in the cloud. Maybe you want to be able to have breakout rooms so that your larger group can meet and then smaller groups can also meet during the same meeting. All of these different features will affect which tool you choose and oftentimes which package you purchase because different features may incur different prices. In addition to that, you also want to think about what other third-party tools that you're using and are there any meeting integrations. So we're going to talk about that in more detail in a minute, but many of us right now, in order to do our work online and manage everything from home and keep the workflow kind of happening at a pace that is viable, essentially what we're looking at is lots of different tools coming together. So we may be using GoToMeeting for our meetings. We may be using Slack for our daily chat. We may be using G Suite to store all of our files and our emails. So just thinking about it as a toolkit, I think is really valuable. And you'll find that more and more of these systems are integrating with each other and have ways to connect. So Slack especially has a lot of different apps you can use to connect Slack to different tools that you're using that can be really helpful. And then really choosing one person who's going to be in charge of hosting the meetings and taking the lead on the technical end, or maybe even choosing 2 or 3 people that can build that skill. So I think it's really important because sometimes when you're new, it can be a little confusing to run the meetings online. And the only way that you're going to get better at it is to keep doing it, right? To just keep hosting more meetings, keep testing things until you get really comfortable. If you're a larger company, then you really might not want just one person to have that skill, because what if they are sick? What if they're unable to attend? Then who will pick up that mantle and kind of take the lead to set everything up and host the meeting and kind of make sure the technical end of things is running okay? So one of the things that we've done in our company is that Jenna, who's our program manager, and I think both have pretty strong skills in leading meetings online and in leading webinars and online classes. And so a lot of times between the two of us, we can manage a lot of that and help the rest of the team put things together. And then when it comes to pricing, you will see a lot of these tools do offer free versions. And especially right now, as we go through the COVID-19 crisis, what we're seeing is a lot of the platforms are offering amazing discounts. They're offering 1 or 2 months for free. They're just doing a lot of different things to try to help everybody make this transition. And I think we can take advantage of those free versions if we need to. But just keep in mind that a lot of times the free versions, again, will have some limitation to the number of features that you can have. So again, those are just kind of an overview of the do's and don'ts that I kind of always have in my mind as I put together different meetings. And then I have some favorite tools that I want to suggest, but I do want to welcome everybody in the chat. If there's tools that I'm not talking about that you really like, feel free to share them because I think we all have some experience. There's 3 that I'm using very, very frequently. The first is GoToMeeting. And the reason, just so you all know, that I have 3 different sort of softwares that I use regularly is because some of my client base and my student base were already using certain things. And so instead of making them learn something new, I just went ahead and I learned something new. And so since a lot of these systems operate very similarly, it's easy for me because of my knowledge to hop in and just quickly understand the difference between GoToMeeting or Zoom or BlueJeans or WebEx, right? But I have a few that I've gotten really good at using and that I really like because the pricing is affordable and because the features they offer are pretty diverse. So the first one is GoToMeeting. They're actually owned by a company called LogMeIn, which if you're not familiar with them, they're a company I've been familiar with for many years because they're a system through which I can access my clients' computers remotely. But GoToMeeting has a ton of different features that you can use, pretty similar to what Zooms are, including that there's a variety of different meeting types. You can have private rooms and group rooms. You can do recordings of everything. And there's a number of different kind of features that, depending on which package you see here, professional, business, enterprise, you'll get access to different things. The other thing you'll notice here is that a lot of pricing can also be attached to the number of participants. So you'll see here their lowest price caps at 150 participants. The next one at 250, the next one at 3,000. So depending on the size of your company, the size of the meetings you need to have, you're going to want to basically choose your packages based on that. And for those of you who do download the slide deck, when you click on this link right here at the top, you're going to be able to see all of the features that are provided inside of these different packages. So that's just something that I think is worthwhile to go and research if you're making a decision now about which system to use. You'll see something similar with Zoom. These are their basic packages, Basic, Pro, Business, and Enterprise. You'll see they do have a free version, but it does stop your meetings at 40 minutes. So if you want to have meetings longer than that, you do have to sign up for a paid account. I will say with Zoom, when you use the free version, literally the whole video conference or call just drops at the 40-minute mark. So if you go over, it's just gonna disconnect everybody instantly. But if your meetings are shorter, you may be able to use that. But as you can see, again, they have incremental pricing that goes up depending on what you're buying. There's different features that are included with each. And again, everyone's going to have a different preference about what they need. And for us, we started at one level and then moved up to another level. So you may see that down the road, as you've gotten better at this and you're doing more online meetings, that you want to expand the features or expand the number of people. And then you just have to do a simple upgrade. The third and final tool that I really enjoy is something that's provided by a CRM called Zoho. And Zoho has a separate tool just for meetings. You can see there it starts at $8 a month. And then they have a webinar version. This is very similar to Zoom. You have sort of traditional meetings, and then you have webinars as your options. And webinars are what we are doing right now. So it's a little bit different than the actual meeting features. This I really like because a lot of my clients were using the Zoho customer relationship management tool. And so the Zoho meetings tool plugs directly in to all of their other tools, which to me is just a big perk to using their system. So if I'm tracking all of my client projects inside of Zoho and I'm using some of their other tools to manage my team and to do project management and to do customer outreach, I can have Zoho meetings kind of plugged right into that. And then it's going to be able to communicate between the tools. And you'll see again this list of features. What do you get out of this? Again, some things are going to be webinar related versus meeting related, so you would pay a different price. But some of the other tools that I've used and continue to use, depending on which client or which student we're talking about, are Join Me, Blue Jeans, Ring Central, WebEx meetings, Google Hangouts, which is now sort of called Google Meet, depending on how you're using it, whether you're using it in an individual Google account or you're using it with G Suite. And then I still use Skype quite a bit. So even this morning, I had a student who's going to be meeting with me next week. And I said, hey, I'll set up a Zoom call for us. And she said, every time I click on a Zoom link, for some reason my camera fails. Could we just use Skype instead? And I said, absolutely. Here's my handle. And of course, if you have people that are connected to you through Facebook, or they have an iPhone, they could also use FaceTime pretty easily. So I think all of these tools are valuable. Like I said, they all have different features, and it really depends on exactly what kind of goals you have for your meetings, what size of meeting you're having, and kind of what it is that you really want to accomplish during those meetings. And I know a lot of us, like I said, are used to meeting in person with our colleagues or our clients or coworkers. And so we're having to get creative and figure out new ways to have those relationships and keep our creativity fueled. So you might start, like I said, with one tool and then decide as you go along that you'd like to use another tool instead. So don't be afraid to do that. Jenna and I used Join Me for quite a few years before we graduated up to Zoom. And so, you might ebb and flow with this as you move forward over the next few months into figuring out what's going to work best. Also, like I said, a lot of us are using other types of companion tools for varying levels of project management. And I just think this is, again, an important thing to pay attention to, because even if you're not making a literal technical integration, you're going to be, like I said, creating a toolkit. So usually if you're running your business more virtually, you have a few different things that you're working with. You have a way to communicate and track your customers. You have a way to project manage your projects and interact with other people. You have a way to store all your files in the cloud. you have a way to meet with people through video conferencing online or do webinars. So a lot of us are using things now like Slack or Asana, Basecamp, G Suite, Trello. And you'll just see that a lot of different systems out there now have a varying level of compatibility with video conferencing tools. So think about that. Again, Zoho is a great example of an all-in-one tool where you can use them for just one simple thing, or you can really build out a much larger support system in their tools. So these are just a few of my favorites, but there's certainly many others. And again, I'm curious for those of you who are out there, if you have any additional tools that you like, that you're sharing, or that you're using that you want to share with us, please feel free. And also, as we continue to talk about some other things, if you have any questions about the video conferencing tools that I recommend, or if you have any questions about some of these companion tools that have more to do with bigger project management needs, please feel free to let me know. I've used a lot of these tools regularly. I feel like I've gotten pretty familiar with a lot of them. And if you're new to them, I want to encourage you to Google things. So a lot of times, especially with Slack, I don't know for sure if Slack lets us integrate with something or have specific features. So let's say I'm interested to know whether or not Slack can include hourly time tracking. I can go to Google and actually type in, can Slack track my hours? And a lot of times it'll bring up the page of the Slack website that really explains that particular feature. So let me see who's chatting in here. Hey, Evan. So I see your question here. We've been using WebEx, or your comment, and it's working pretty great. They beefed up their free version during coronavirus, and after a bunch of research, we felt like it had the best free version right now. So great. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, right? So especially right now, a lot of us have some opportunities to test out some new tools or sign up for different tools than what we've used in the past. And you'll see that a lot of the companies, because they know the situation we're in, they're really trying to help people and really trying to give us access to things quickly and easily so we can make a transition. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for letting us know that, because I didn't know they had adjusted their free version. That's excellent. And then Nicole, I see here, I will primarily be using these tools to conduct and record video interviews with 1 or 2 people. I'm curious to know if one tool has better quality recordings than another. So it's funny because it's hard to know that when you're just looking at the tool's website. So if I go to Zoom versus GoToMeeting versus Join Me, a lot of them will say we can record this for you and it will be a good recording. So a lot of times if you want to know just a general opinion about different tools and comparisons, you'll actually just again want to Google things like that. So which video conferencing tool has the best video recording or audio recording or video and audio quality? You'll find there's a ton of people out there that have tested a variety of these tools and have opinions. Myself included, I have my own opinions, which I'll give you in just a moment. But you may want to read up on it. The other thing is that when you're hosting the meeting and you're the one recording the call, keep in mind that your internet speed and the strength of your internet is directly affecting the quality on some level. And then the other 2 people, wherever they're coming from, the quality of their audio and video will also be affected by their Wi-Fi or internet connection. So there's some level of this that you cannot control, right? So we just want to keep that in mind, because occasionally I have brought guest speakers into my meetings or my webinars, and I sound great, everybody else sounds great, and they don't sound as great. And it's because where they are sitting, they are just not running at the same technical level that we are. Now, all of that being said though, a good example would be Jenna and I used Join Me for quite a long time. It worked really well in the beginning and it had a great free version when we started. But the truth is, there came a time where we started to realize the audio quality and the video quality was not really as strong as we hoped. And that's when we did some research and we ended up choosing Zoom. So for me personally, I think Zoom has excellent quality overall, comparatively. So join me, I had a lot more differences between, let's say, me recording at the office versus me recording at home versus me recording other people in other locations. I feel like Zoom, I've had a lot more consistency in the quality. The other thing to keep in mind is that the mics that people are using will also affect the quality, and the cameras they're using will affect the quality. So if I have an older computer with a camera that's not as good, I might see that the quality is lower. If I'm using the microphone directly on my laptop, I might find that the quality of that microphone is not that great. That's why I have an external mic to try to enhance that. Also, when we record webinars through Zoom, there's really no editing. Once I click that record button, it records everything from start to end, and it creates a file that has everything in it. If I'm really paying attention and I make sure to start and stop the recording at exactly the right times, then I can get a pretty clean recording. But if I start it in the beginning and I'm testing the audio video, it's picking up on all of that. So I actually have a video editor as well for my meetings and webinars. So for all of you, once I'm done this, I will actually download this file into Camtasia, which is a video editing tool that I use. And then I can make some small edits, crop out things that aren't necessary. And I do that pretty regularly just because I want the recording of what we're keeping on file to be as useful as possible and not to have too much clutter inside of it. So if you really want to have more control, being able to save that MP4 recording and then pop it into an editor and make a few small changes, or maybe even adjust the audio so that it's better. So sometimes I interview people that have softer voices, and then I have the ability, once I have that recording, to put it into the video editor, and I can select the area where the other person is talking and increase the sound, make their voice louder. Or in the opposite, sometimes because I'm such a public speaker, I project a lot, and then I have to go in and edit and turn my voice down a little bit. So that takes a little bit more time, and not everybody needs to do that. But since I do online classes and I have to edit a lot of things anyway, sometimes I'll make adjustments like that. Yeah, so Nicole, I'm really glad that was helpful. Because like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I've certainly made a ton of mistakes. I've certainly had a ton of recordings that were bad. A lot of times I've just tried to learn from those mistakes and then next time do better. So always remember, don't feel like it's got to be perfect the first time. It might take a little while to get to the point where you feel like it's really, really perfect. We all can continuously improve. And like I said, there are some things in this world that we can't really control. So it's just okay if there's things that aren't always exactly right. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to keep people engaged. And this is something that I think is just, for those of us who've been doing virtual meetings and a variety of different types of webinars or classes, it's something that we're constantly, again, improving on, constantly working on, always looking for ways that we can do better. And so this is something that, again, I want to encourage you to, not try to be perfect. Sometimes the meetings might, be a little off the first couple weeks, but then they get better. But the goal is for these meetings, like I said, to replace in-person meetings where we get the chance to really connect. And David, I see your comment here. We work with a lot of Medicare folks, suggestions for platform or technique. Can you be a little bit more specific about what you mean? I think for me, all the platforms I suggested are all legitimate. Again, my three favorites being GoToMeeting and Zoom. Zoho, I think, really only makes sense potentially if you want to connect into their larger platform. But is there something more specific you're asking about in relationship to Medicare folks? And I'll give you a minute to type that in. Yeah, so over 65 age group, maybe not tech savvy. Yeah, so one of the things that I will suggest that I really like about Zoom is that it's very easy. And that is another reason that we chose to use Zoom. it's very easy for me to explain to people that if they're on their computer or their laptop, when I send them the Zoom link, they almost only have to click on it and it will just open the window and let them join. So I really like that aspect. They're not forced to download an app. They're not forced to do anything to their computer. Now, if they're on their tablet or their smartphone, I warn them ahead of time that they may need to go to the App Store and download the free Zoom app. And this is actually true of most of the softwares out there. You want to let people know before the meeting, hey, if you're using your phone or your mobile device, you need to go download the app for free. And then when you get the link, click on it, it'll automatically open the app for you. So letting them know that ahead of time. The last thing I would say they need to know ahead of time, which really is just something you have to communicate to them about, is the idea that they need speakers and a microphone. They need a headset. They need something that's going to make it easy for them to hear. A lot of times, for some reason, especially on desktops and laptops, I have found that older folks aren't really accustomed to using those features of their computers. They don't know how to go into their preferences, into their settings, make sure things are turned on. And so if I know I've got a number of people that are, maybe brand new to this idea, then I might do a whole test meeting to say, please join us on this day ahead of our first official meeting so that we can make sure everybody's speakers are working, that they have their headsets set up, that they know how to plug them in. And so a lot of times I'll just do like a test run beforehand. Or like I said, if you want to do it the day of the meeting, schedule them to log on about 15 minutes before you start officially, because that way you'll have plenty of time to solve all those technical difficulties before you're actually eating into the time that you need to spend actually having the meeting. But those are like the best, those are the things I think that come up the most frequently that you can try to navigate ahead of time, right? So making sure the audio is going to work, and if they need a microphone, that they understand how to set all that up on their own. Making sure, like I said, that they know they have to download something ahead of time. And then, like I said, for me, Zoom ended up being a big winner because of how simplistic it was. And I know somebody mentioned WebEx. I feel like WebEx is really simple like this too. I would say GoToMeeting more frequently. I see with GoToMeeting that people end up having to download the app to their laptop or their computer. And sometimes that feels a little frustrating to people who maybe aren't as comfortable downloading lots of programs to their computer for privacy and security reasons. But again, I would say WebEx might be another opportunity where when you send the link, people can typically just click on it and then very, very easily join in, which is super helpful. But yeah, let me know if that helps or if there's any other questions about that. One other thing I'll throw in there, David, is I would definitely consider seeing if you can get a partner sometimes with you so that you're also not the only one trying to solve some of those technical issues. Jenna often joins me, especially for the beginning of all my webinars and meetings, even when she's not participating, simply because I know as I'm getting everybody set up and testing, it's really helpful for her to be able to hop into the chat and talk to people and answer their questions. So having another facilitator might be really helpful in that respect, and can, ease the burden on just one singular person from doing it. So again, we're talking about how to keep people engaged. And like I said, this is something that, is really important and that, we spend a lot of time kind of analyzing and thinking about when it comes to our, whole kind of system for running things online. So the first thing is start with simple beginnings and endings. This has to do with the fact that for a lot of people, especially now that we're all at home and we're spending a lot more time digitally in the internet doing our jobs, it's fun for people to have easy wins at the beginning and end of the meeting to feel like they've accomplished something, right? So you might start with icebreakers, you might start with a meme of the week, or you might start with individual check-ins In our EOS, we call it a segue. So when we start our meetings, each person involved in the meeting gets to give an update on how they're doing personally. So it has nothing to do with work. It's a segue into talking about work, right? I've definitely been in a lot of meetings where we start with some breath work. So I'm part of a nonprofit, and because a lot of our meetings happen in the evenings and a lot of us have already worked 8 or 10 hours that day, we go ahead and we all just quietly sit. One of us will lead a little maybe 3-minute breathing session, but that allows us to release our day, release our responsibilities, and then really focus in on the nonprofit work that we're doing. Because a lot of us, especially the board members and the leadership team, we're volunteers, right? So it just helps us get centered. And because a lot of times we are working and doing different things, our nonprofit team doesn't actually get to meet all that frequently. So when we do it, we really want to kind of commune with each other. And when we end meetings, a lot of times that we'll think about how we can end it with some sort of positive thing, whether it's a gratitude where everybody shares something they're grateful for. At JV Media, one of the things Justin implemented years ago was something called the Rose and the Thorn. So that's where everybody on the team would get to say, what is the best thing that's happened in the last week? And what was the most frustrating thing that happened this week? So we kind of look at the positive and the negative. Sometimes we've gone around the room and just given each other shout outs and recognitions and, given people kind of the chance to shine in front of everybody. So not just giving gratitude in general, but being thankful for our coworkers, being thankful for our clients, whatever it is, and giving them a shout out for something special that they did for us. And then you can, even if you're doing larger group meetings, again, if you have a tool that allows you to have breakouts or rooms, you could end a meeting by asking everybody to pair up and then go into their own room, or assign pairs and asking them to go into their own rooms, and give them some sort of exchange to have or conversation to have. At JB Media, we have often in the past done something called Coffee Talk, where everyone who works for the company each week sets up a time to have a cup of coffee with somebody else. And, that allows us to get out of the office, maybe go to the coffee shop, sit and have an exchange about something more personal and get to know each other. That is something that you can also do virtually and just invite your team to do on their own. Just make the expectations clear. But this is why you saw today I started with our poll. A lot of times I like to start off our webinars with some type of feedback. And I see there's a few of you who haven't answered, so I'm just leaving it open if you want to. But again, you can see a lot of people now are doing daily and weekly meetings, right? Some people are just doing monthly. But I think a lot of us, as all this coronavirus situation has affected our jobs, we're having to meet more frequently. We're having to talk to people more to stay connected. And even in some ways as teams, we're having to just share what's happening to all of us. So are you safe? Are you healthy? How's your family? What's going on in your town? What's going on in your area? And so the frequency of meetings has actually increased quite a bit for people. So this is something that I see reflected here. And again, if you didn't answer the poll, feel free to hop in. But that's just a good example of one way that sometimes I can kind of start the conversation going for everybody and also let you all kind of see what's happening with other people. So the second way to keep engagement going is to meet with the cameras on. Now, right now, we're using Zoom's webinar feature. And the webinar feature is not really meant to create a world where we are all on camera talking to each other. Webinars are typically, I think, considered more like online sort of classes or lectures, whatever that is. And a lot of times the participants are muted. You can chat, you can use the Q&A, you can raise your hand. You can do different things inside the different platforms. But when we're actually using meeting features, especially for internal teams or meeting with clients or customers, I think it's really important for the cameras to be on. So a lot of times this holds people more accountable, right, to their participation in the meeting and giving their full attention and their full focus to the goals and the basic agenda that you've set out. So I think this is something that's really valuable. Sometimes you'll definitely hear people are resistant to it because they're working from home. They don't think they look that great, whatever it is. I just want to encourage you to make sure, especially if you're working with your own staff members, and I mean, actually, even I do it with my clients just so they know what to expect. But essentially, especially when you have staff and a team that you're trying to meet with, just tell them what you expect. If it's okay for them to be working from home during this time in their yoga pants with their hair in a bun, and not made up, then let them know that's okay for them, right? To do that. And that way they won't feel uncomfortable turning that camera on and connecting with you. We've had a lot of jokes, quite honestly, with my client base over the last, so I build websites. I've been meeting with a lot of my clients online. There's been a running joke all week about how many of the clients are actually wearing pants when they get on their calls with me. So they know I'm laid back though, and I don't need them to look a certain way for us to do our work. If they want to come to the meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning in their bathrobe because they're working from home, that's fine with me. And so I'm very clear with them that I don't have that expectation. Because I've been working at home on and off for the last 17 years, it's funny, even when I work at home, there's still a big motivation for me to get up in the morning, shower, get dressed as if I'm going to the office, and then walk into my workday, even though it might be in my living room, right? But that's just because I'm not a good morning person and it takes me a while to wake up. And if I don't do my routine, I sort of get out of sync with things. But you can set that expectation for people so they can feel comfortable. And I really think turning the cameras on makes a big difference in seeing each other, being able to kind of know that people are watching you. So if they're talking, that you be really looking at them, listening to them. The one exception, again, would be for those of us in rural areas. Sometimes you'll have people in your meetings where their internet is too slow. And so if that's the case, they might just have to turn their camera off to make it work. And that is totally okay. The next thing is to set some norms or agreements for your meetings. And this is something I want to give a shout out to the former operations manager of JB Media Group, the agency, Adrienne Gordon, because this is something I really learned from her. She's a pretty skilled meeting facilitator. And when she was working here, she really just helped me realize the value of at each meeting really having some agreements that everybody on the team makes. And, because I work more one-on-one in my website business with clients, we don't have to do this as much because it's a one-to-one relationship. I'm often meeting with them alone. But when you're in a group setting with a bunch of different personalities, I think getting everybody to approach the meeting with the same values is really important. So a good thing to think about is, what is good behavior? Example, don't talk over each other during the meeting. So maybe, if I can see all 6 of you on camera, excuse me. If I can see all 6 of you on camera, then essentially, I can say you're all muted, but raise your hand when you want to actually contribute something. Or like I said, there's usually a raise your hand feature, or there's a chat feature they can use. So let people know that. So people aren't just unmuting themselves and talking over people. Have that expectation that we want to let somebody finish their thought before we add to it. How to relate to others. So one of my favorites that we've used at JB Media is that at every meeting, we should assume good intentions. We should always assume that the other people that we're working with, their goal is to do right by the clients, do right by the company, even if they're disagreeing with us or disagreeing with our idea or want to provide an alternative idea to what we've suggested, that their intention is never negative towards us. And that's really important because in a lot of creative teams, we won't always agree. We won't always see eye to eye, and we need to be able to talk those things out with a positive, productive outcome. And then how will you vote on different ideas? So if there's decisions that have to be made, how will you quickly and easily get responses from people Now, of course, with more important and detailed and complicated decisions, you might want to have a deeper feedback system. But one of my favorite things that we did at JB Media for a long time, and I've implemented with a bunch of my nonprofit boards, is that sometimes when we're going through deciding very basic things like what is the name of the campaign going to be, or when are we going to do our retreat next in the next 6 months, or what colors do we want to put on our latest, social media graphics that we're making for something? Those are simple decisions that I just sometimes need everybody to feedback on. And we're kind of going to take a majority rules approach. One of the things that I learned at JB Media was to do sort of a up, down, or center response. And so it's a really quick visual. Again, if you had larger teams of 30 or 40 people, that would be harder to do. And you may need to have a poll that allows them to answer really fast. But we just do it visually with smaller teams. And a lot of times what this means is we're making a decision. This means I'm good with the decision. This means I really don't care either way. I trust whatever you guys decide. And this means I have a real problem with the idea or the suggestion or whatever we're saying we're going to do. And if we have one thumbs down or a few thumbs down, that means we need to keep talking about what we're discussing because we don't have full buy-in. And so having something easy that allows you to read the room like that and gives you a quick, fast way to get feedback is really valuable. And again, you could use a variety of different tools to do this. Even a poll, you could ask people to say yes, no, or I feel uncomfortable, right? So you can give people those options in a digital way as well. The next thing is when you want to engage teams especially, I think it's really important, and I even do this not just with my internal team, but with my clients. So when I have a client who's got multiple people on the team, one of the things I like to do in our meetings is really make sure that we highlight different team members and that each meeting we have at least 5 minutes dedicated to something like this. So at JB Media, one of the things I really love is occasionally at meetings here, we have asked colleagues to tell who in the company they think has lived the brand values and how. So the JB Media suite of companies, the Institute and the agency both, we have kind of brand values that we follow that are really important to us. I feel like it's sort of what unifies the team in a lot of ways. And so one of the things that we like to sort of show each other is if one of our values is balance, and I can see that one of our team members this week did a great job maintaining work-life balance, I can give that shout out, right? It's just a way to really build confidence for people and to make them feel seen and appreciated. You can also talk about how people went above and beyond. So maybe they went above and beyond on a project, or they really helped a customer. Maybe you received an email from somebody, a client or a customer, about how happy they were with the services or the products. You could share that. Or even sometimes you've got people who've just excelled. They've improved. They've learned a new skill. So in our office, again, a lot of people get different certifications for things like Google Analytics or Hootsuite. We want to celebrate people that they've taken the time to develop professionally or personally. So think about how you can build this in. It doesn't have to be a round robin where you let everybody talk every meeting. It can really be kind of 1 or 2 people that you choose every week or every month or whatever your frequency is to say, hey, let's show appreciation for people that we know are really making an effort. The next thing for engagement is to clearly identify your next steps. So we talked about the importance of the agenda and the goals. It's really important that everybody who attended the meeting understands the outcomes of that meeting. And so we want to be able to really clearly state at the end, hey, as a team, here's our next steps. By the way, here's some individual people who have tasks or actions that they need to take. And if they have deadlines, here they are. This is where if you're using something like Asana or Basecamp, you might have somebody actually create the tasks for that team member, so that as you're going through the meeting, the tasks are actually being added to the project management software. And then we really want to say, okay, at the beginning, we outlined our meeting goals. Have we accomplished them? If we've accomplished them all, woohoo. If we haven't, that's okay, but why? Is there further discussion needed? Are there more details needed? Do we need people to do something? What is it that impeded our ability to accomplish our goals? And how can we make sure that, we solve that issue for the next time? So a couple final pro tips. One, if you have a larger business and you're going to be bringing larger groups into your meetings, like I said, you may need multiple facilitators. You may need 2, you may need 3. So you may need one person that's doing what I'm doing now, which is leading the conversation and the agenda and kind of putting together all the different slides. If you have guest people, maybe they're in contact with those guest people that they're bringing in. You might need one person that's in charge of the technical difficulties and managing the chat. Chats can get very busy if you have high numbers of people in your meetings. And then you might need one person who records notes and also make sure that you don't forget to click that record button, right? To start recording the meeting. So it's easy sometimes when I'm the one checking in with everybody and getting started, I might forget to click record. So just having one person who can keep you on top of that is really, really valuable. And the last pro tip, create feedback loops of people attending the meetings. So this is something I think, especially for those of us who are new to working at home, for those of us who maybe are just now kind of getting their whole team set up for the first time where everybody's remote. It's really important, I think, to get actual feedback and opinions from the people that are attending your meetings, whether it's your team or your clients. So in EOS, we actually get to rate our meetings. That means we get to give it a 1 through 10, 10 being the best. And so that allows us instantly to see anybody who maybe didn't enjoy that meeting. You can also send a poll to see what worked and what didn't. So you could create a SurveyMonkey or a Google form or any of those other tools out there, send it to everybody on your staff, send it to all your clients and say, how did you feel the meetings went over the last 2 weeks? Did these things work? Did these things not work? What is the situation? I try to keep polls to maybe 3 to 5 questions, and I like to make them multiple choice so people don't have to type in their opinions. And then finally, you want to regularly solicit new ideas about how to make deeper connections. So rely on your team to tell you what would be fun for them to share, what would be fun for them to talk about, what would be a great thing to add to the meeting that would make them feel more engaged and more excited. Especially, again, for those of you who are new to this, your team might be feeling kind of isolated. So ask them to tell you how you can help them move on from that. So I know we're right up at the end. I know there haven't been too many questions, but I will stay on and answer any questions that you have. So feel free to chat them in or add them to the Q&A. Like I said, you will get a copy of this where you can watch the recording and you can download the slide deck. Also, if you're interested, we have our next free monthly digital drop-in coming up on April 8th, which I'm really excited about. So if you want to join us for that, we'll be talking about Instagram stories and how to make the most out of Instagram stories. Like I said, in April, check back for our free community webinars in April. And we also have a free digital marketing toolkit that you can use. So if there's any resources that JB Media can provide, please let me know. And at the bottom of this slide deck, you also have access to all of my contact information. So please feel free to consider me a resource. Thanks so much, David. Please consider me a resource. Find me on social media. Feel free to email me if I can ever be of help with you as you work from home more, as you facilitate more meetings, and as you run more overall online communications in general. Feel free to reach out. I'm glad to share any knowledge that I can. So I really appreciate everyone being here. And like I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to chat them in. And then Jennifer, so yes, I can ask Jenna to include that information. But if you just go to jbmediagroupllc.com and you go to the Institute section, we have a page called Free Webinar, and everything is up there, and you can sign up right on the website. So we do that. Usually it's the first Wednesday of every month. I was busy this first Wednesday of April, so we're doing it on the 2nd. But the first Wednesday of every month are the JB Media digital drop-ins. But yeah, I'll ask Jenna to include that in the email when she reaches out to everybody. Thanks so much, Sherry. Thanks so much for being here, Jennifer. Like I said, I'm glad this information is helpful to all of you. If anybody has suggestions on other webinars that you'd like to see us present for the community in April, again, please feel free to use my personal contact information and let me know what kind of topics you'd like to see. We really want to make sure that we're here to support everybody in our networks, whether they're in Asheville or beyond, because we know this transition is such a big one for most people. So please feel free to just consider me a resource and reach out anytime. But again, I'll stay online for just a little bit longer in case there's any additional questions. And for the rest of you, I hope you have an excellent rest of your week.